Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order of City Council for Tuesday, October the 24th. Could you rise if you're able for national anthem?
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
At this time, if I could call on Councillor Elliott to do our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. The land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawandurunk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you, Councillor. We have one proclamation. The Canadian Federation of University Women requests proclamation for International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, November the 25th, 2023, and the lighting of the cupola at City Hall. If I could have Councillors Aquilina and Bodner move that. Are there any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Adoption of the agenda as amended. And there was a memorandum from Director of Corporate Services, Treasurer 2024 Operating Levy Budget. So there was an amendment to that. If I could have Councillors Danch and Elliott, Bodner and Hoyle move the adoption of the agenda. Questions? Changes? All in favor? Carried. I do not have any disclosures of interest this evening. Just to make sure, there are none. Perfect. Approval of the minutes. We have 4 sets of minutes. We have the special council meeting, closed session August 15th, 2023. Regular meeting of council October 10th, 2023. Special joint council meeting with the Township of Waynfleet October 16th, 2023. Committee of the Whole Budget October 18th, 2023. If I could have Councillors Danch and Elliott move the minutes. Questions on any of those? All in favor? That's carried. The following items have been pulled for separate discussions. Item 8.1, 8.2, 9.1, 9.4, and 9.5. Are there any further items? So for those remaining items that have not been pulled, if I could have Councillors Bruno and Bagu move those. All in favor? That's carried. There are no presentations or delegations this evening, so I'll get into the Mayor's report. Oh, and Councillor Davies is away, so if you do have any questions for the region, I can take them under my Mayor's report in case there are any. Thank you, Councillor Beauregard, for serving as Deputy Mayor last week while I attended the Highway H2O conference. In Port Colborne, we are part of the Highway H2O, which includes the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence Seaway System, which serves a market of more than 150 million people. It includes a network of 40 ports with intermodal connections. The Highway H2O Conference included members of shipping companies, seaway executives, leaders of business and industry, and we learned about social sustainability, climate change, and economic impact. The annual economic impact for businesses on the Great Lakes is $46 billion, as reported by the Marine Chamber of Commerce. The economic impact on Port Colborne alone is $64 million per year. That's how much economic impact we see in Port Colborne related to every ton of cargo on every ship that passes through our city. That impact is calculated not only by the cargo on the vessels, but by every dollar it takes to move that cargo. It takes into consideration the paychecks of the crews and the ships, and the salaries of the staff of the Seaway, groceries they buy for their families, the shoes they buy for their children, the meals they buy in restaurants. All that combined creates the economic impact. That economic impact is now affected by a strike between Unifor and the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation. The four Welland mayors, Mayor Cisco from St. Catharines, Terry Ugolini from Thorold, and Welland Mayor Frank Campion and I issued a joint statement yesterday to encourage an end to the strike to keep supply chains flowing. No one wants to strike, no one is happy when there is a strike, not union members and not management. There are 360 workers on strike from Unifor Locals 4211, 4212, and 4323 in Ontario, and 4319 and 4320 in Quebec. We urge the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation and Unifor to get down to business, back to the table, negotiate in good faith, and bring this strike to an end. Also, just with regards to the Highway H2O, Bram Cotton, our Economic Development Officer, was part of a roundtable which spoke about marine services in ports. He concentrated on obviously the port in Port Colborne, but he also spoke about cruise shipping across the Great Lakes. Just want to pull that up here, bear with me. Just gotta find where Bram is on this. Here we are. So the module is called Ports and Communities. We had David Gattell, the Chief Commercial Officer from the Port of Cleveland, Bram Cotton, the Economic Development Officer, obviously, for Port Colborne, Sarah Herdman, Chief Executive Officer, Access Renewable Energy Limited, and Dan Karageorge, General Manager of McLean Kennedy, Inc. Our moderator for that was Frank Herkmans, who's a business development Tomlinson group of companies in their Ontario Trap Rock. So Bram did that. Funny thing is David Gattell from the Port of Cleveland had an article in the Canadian Marine Chamber of Commerce with regards to Cleveland being the king of cruising on the Great Lakes. So we touched base with the author of that and said, 42 stops doesn't cut it, boys. We had 82 stops in the city of Port Colborne. So David, Bram, and I had a good laugh and joke going during their panel session with regards to Port Colborne being the king of the Great Lakes in cruising. So Bram did a fantastic job, took some great questions. He also discussed the Ontario Marine strategy that was released a couple Saturdays ago. I've spoken about that before. And all in all, it was a great conference. As I said, the plenaries were really good, but it's the mix and mingle times when you get to talk to people. And Bram and I came back speaking with a few companies out there with some work that we have going on here in Port Colborne that they may be able to help us with, and some products that we could look at with regards to ongoing projects within the municipality. So, they're very well worth it on these. So it was a day and a half of that. It's Halloween next week, so we'll see lots of ghosts and goblins out at dusk and after dark. Please, all drivers, take care and have caution while you're driving out on our roads, as we all should every day. Roselawn will be dressed up like a haunted house, so be sure to take your trick-or-treaters for tricks or treats at the Roselawn Center. The front door will be open for business on Halloween Eve. The Royal Canadian Legion annual Poppy campaign kicks off on Friday, October the 27th. I'll be honored by the first poppy of the campaign for Legion Branch 56, right across the street from the City Hall at King George Park. Please support the campaign. When you buy a poppy, you're supporting Legion programs which help veterans and their families. We wear poppies every year until the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, when we meet at the Cenotaphs in H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park and Centennial Park at Cedar Bay. We gather to honor the sacrifices made by our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents to protect freedom around the world. that ends my report. Are there any questions and also any regional questions? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a regional question posed to me, and I really didn't have an answer, and I don't want to just drop this on you, but the question was, what's becoming of garbage and recycling collection throughout Niagara, and will anything change? I know that there's...
So garbage, no, that's not changing at all. We'll continue with the two contracts we have. We have two zones, east zone and a west zone. So those will be maintained. A number of years ago, the Liberal government came out with a plan for recycling where the manufacturers actually take care of that. The current government is moving forward with that bill, if you call it, that was passed in the legislature. So now it's coming to fruition. The region will hand that over to the companies that will, and it could be the same company, we don't know. So the manufacturers and the people that create the recyclables will be the ones to pick it up on a weekly basis. It could be bi-weekly, we're not sure, we don't have all the details yet, but it's being done, so, but they will be taking that over.
Okay,
So-
that's what I tried to explain to him, is that the manufacturers of the recyclable products pick up the cost of it now. I didn't know if it was going to be a seamless transition, and it would be the same companies picking it up, or they're going to have their own companies. So, but it was an interesting question that I never had posed before, and it's almost like it's flying under the radar that changes are coming. I don't know what happens post pickup, if they go to the same recycling facilities, or what changes there, or if anything's going to change in the composition of what they collect. So couldn't answer that. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, because our recycling facility in Niagara Falls is going to be sold. I don't think it's closed yet, but I think it's, is it off? Okay, so it did close. Yeah, they're going to take it there. They're going to continue to operate it. So I would think the same operator that's picking it up now would, assuming unless somebody comes in and undercuts them by so much, they already know the routes. They're already here. If they take over those contracts, so that again, we'll have to wait to see. This has been a long time coming. This is like 10 years of two different governments that proposed this, so it's finally being enacted. So, but yeah, I can find out more at my next Public Works meeting and ask that question. Yeah, I'll get back to you. Perfect. Further questions? Great, thank you. Staff remarks. Madam Clerk, anything? No? Mr. Long? Chief?
Through the mayor to council. Last council meeting, I believe it was Councillor Bagg, you asked me about some activities on enforcement down at the marina, especially the boat ramp. I did email council, but just so that people that tune in, I could tell them. While we don't record every visit to the ramp, there was 34 occasions where we wrote a total of 59 tickets in total. So I believe the enforcement has been showing that, for the most part, people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Thank
Okay.
you.
That directly, yes.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Chief, for that report. I think that is miles ahead of what's happened in previous years, but some of that had to do with the type of parking methodology, which was the solar-controlled parking machines that were down more than they were up. And so greatly appreciated down there. I did want to explore this a little more, and it doesn't have to be for tonight. But I would say, with 34 inspections down there and 59 tickets, that tells me that it's obviously on average more than one a day, but more importantly, that a lot of those people not only should have been paying, but maybe some of them, if there was more enforcement, would realize that buying a ramp pass is the best way. So my question is, with the active part of the marina being some sort of 90 days, June, July, August, what would it take for more enforcement there. My view is, can it be systematized to something like, a lot of people who go boating there are there 6 a.m., 7 a.m., often before we start. Notwithstanding in the summer we have reduced hours, but you know, this is a city-owned asset that could use all the help it could get. Like everything else in our infrastructure bank, it's got more needs than we've got money for, and so they progressed on it. What I would like to see is that we do once a day in those 90 days, and perhaps it's at the beginning of the day, and could we systematize it and just ensure that, because I know of some people who have told ramp pass holders, oh yeah, you know what, it's easier, like if you get a ticket once, it's still cheaper, right, than paying that launch pass. And I think the only way to combat that is, like anything else, now that we're doing it, if we could do it a lot more often. Would you need direction from council? Is it something you could come back on? Is it feasible to do? First thing in the morning, boys and girls, you set out on your route, that's your first stop. I'm just trying to understand how to increase that from 39 days.
Chief?
Through the mayor to council. I mean, we could take a look at just our staffing abilities to do that. One thing that we did have this year, I can tell you, is a heck of a lot of rain, which kept the grass growing, which kept complaints going. So we kind of go on a risk matrix of what's screaming the loudest and what needs to be taken care of. And I will admit that sometimes parking gets pushed back a little bit because of other property standards, lot maintenance, and issues that, quite frankly, we put into the matrix and rate a little bit higher.
If I could, just to close the loop on that, so is it something that we could ask for with the, but agreed that when things happen that are abnormal or you have excess rain, that becomes defaulted as number one in that, and that could potentially, I mean, I would like to see no tickets down there, because that means everybody's paid for their parking, or paid for their launch pass, or paid for a seasonal pass. So my hope isn't to gain more money on tickets, it's to gain more money on launch passes and ramp passes. So I don't know how to address that. Is it something that ultimately you would want us to come forward with, or you would come forward with a report, or you would just would do it minus anything untoward? Because that still seems like a relatively low number against 90 days.
Through the mayor to council, I don't believe there needs to be a report. I think we can maybe focus on that a little bit more. It sounds like that's something council's interested in. I do agree, enforcement leads to the not need for enforcement. So,
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Mr. Szapowski?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So we recently completed trail network upgrades at H.H. Knoll Park. So we're just encouraging the residents to go out there and have a good time at H.H. Knoll and walk those trails and see how they are, and let us know. Take a picture and post it on our site. Some residents will have already noticed that on Elm Street we just completed some rail upgrades. So the rail was rehabilitated and it drives fantastic now. The Valley Health and Wellness Center roof rehab is moving along well, and it's aimed to be completed in November. The final hydrological testing is taking place tomorrow for the Neff Street outfall replacement, which will allow us to complete the design of the new outlet, so then we can then release a tender to have the work completed. Lastly, we have a public engagement survey for the Lock 8 Park Master Plan. We're encouraging all residents to participate and have their say in the park's future. The survey will be available on the city's website until November 17th. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Bowles? Ms. Landry? Staff? Stephanie or Susan? HR? Okay. Mr. CAO? All right. Councilor's remarks. Councilor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. even though you mentioned it, and just in case somebody zoned out while you had your report, which I can't imagine happening, but, you know, maybe somebody did. Remembrance Day ceremonies at Centennial Park on Vinny Ridge Road at Cedar Bay. They will happen again this year, so we invite everybody to come out and enjoy the 50, 60, 70 people that'll be out there doing it. Thanks.
10:30-ish start, Counselor?
Yeah.
Thank you. Counselor Hoyle?
No report.
Counselor Danch?
Well, I can't say that. I got a couple here. Through you, of course, I just wanted to thank Steve there. We got the cobwebs cleaned off the harbor building. They were building up for the last 6 months, so it was nice to see somebody push a broom by it today. I had a little issue with one of the fellows on Erie Street with getting a tree removal done. Curtis has looked after that for me, and I guess his tree will come down real soon. I got a letter here from a guy that lives on Clarence Street, and he's probably watching me now because he wanted to come to council and present this, and it's basically in regards to the speeds through the Clarence Street area heading towards Cement Plant Road. And he's asked me, like, he says he's seen police there, but he hasn't seen a radar set up. He's really concerned that someone's going to get tagged, whether it be a young person or old, because the cars are flying through that area. And I just want to ask if maybe the mayor could reach out to one of his police board friends and we can get somebody down there, because we all get visits from our constituents and that's what we're here for. But, you know, this guy's got a pretty valid point, and I'd like to see us kind of try to help him more if we could. I got one other thing, but I'm not going to bring it up now, and that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, we have had NRP there. They have given out tickets. There's some days they go and they don't give out a ticket because they don't catch everybody speeding. I know they give out tickets because my daughter-in-law got one. So, and she paid it. So, but they have been there, and we know there is a concern down there. I think with the traffic study that Steve's department is doing across the city, we'll bring forward some options for council to talk about when that is presented to us. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not sure who to direct this to. I'll tell you the issue. I'm spending a lot of time these days at the arena, a lot of time at the arena with 4 grandsons. And one of the things I noticed was, and maybe it stands out because I'm aware of it, but I know we're going through the logo change methodically in vehicles as they expire. And it's such a focal point now, Vale, and so busy. I'm just wondering if, like you see it at the one end of the arena, the old logo is there, and we see it around the arena. And I know that there is a schedule. It's hockey season. I don't know who controls that schedule, and if we could maybe push that building up this ladder.
Jeez. Was that planned to ask that? Because the CO has a great answer for you, believe me.
Through your worship to Councillor Bruno, it was literally reported to us today that there are logos going out, so they're on order, decals that are applied. For one thing, to make the 2 Wall of Fame ones the same as each other, because right now the old one and the new one is there, as well as at the, I don't know directionally, so the far south end of the ice above the, below the walking track and above the hockey net. Yes, so I can't say for sure how long our supplier takes and how fast they're applied, but we did get updated that they're on order today. Today we got the update.
Yeah. Funny you asked.
Great service.
Councillor Baggio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll see how they handle this one. Saturday I was driving at Clowley Street West across the Weir Bridge, and before I got to the bridge, the railway crossing lights and bells come on and the arms came down, and everybody had to stop, and most cars, well, the cars all sat there for at least 5 minutes before somebody started going around the arms because there was no train coming. And I'd say I did the exact same thing. I got to the fire hall parking lot, I called the on-call number, and I was told They don't deal with that because it's not city property. I have to go back to the crossing lights and find that phone number and call that number and report it because it's not city's equipment that's malfunctioned. But I sort of argued with her that it's crossing a city road. It affects the city road, but I got no luck anyway. So maybe we could give the on-call after hours. Whoever answers the phone, give her the number. So if she would have given me the phone number, I would have been glad to phone. But that area there's no parking around there. I'd have to park 100 yards away and walk. And I was going somewhere, so I didn't bother. So I don't know what happened. The last time I did it on the Elm Street crossing, the bells and lights were going off at 10 o'clock at night with no train. I called the on-call number, and they said they'd take care of it. So now this time they're not taking care of it. So do we change something here?
What's a region road first? That's why. Region owns that. They own the bridge. We built it, they took it back. So it's a region, that's the reason. It's a regional road. Steve?
Yes, through your worship, I was about to say the same thing. There might have been an issue where it's a regional road, but then Elm Street's owned by us, so it would be through our on-call that we would take over. So there might have been some kind of misunderstanding on the order of who was responsible. But the city's always more than happy to take in a complaint, whether it needs to go to the region or to the short line operator, and do that. So I will follow up with any staff that would have been on Wednesday, just to see exactly what happened and make sure that if there is a process to improve, that we improve it.
So Steve, the councilor made a good point with regards to us having that number handy. Being a weekend when it's on call, is it actually our people or is it a third party that we use?
Through your worship, so we have a service that provides the calls, and then we have staff online. So it's always one number to call, and then they would direct the call to the appropriate on-call supervisor for the night.
So maybe with regards to that, because, I mean, quite frankly, we own the rail line. It's ours. We have a third party that runs it, GeoRail. It is a regional road, but let's stop confusion. You know, let's just look after these things so that, you know, if he calls in, let's make sure our service has the information, our on-call employees have the information that they make, you know, that person answering, in this case, Councillor Baggy's call, says, yep, we'll look after it. They put it forward to Matt, if Matt's working that day, and Matt calls the proper number and gets it fixed. We could, yeah. The confusion, I mean, we ran against this years ago. That's why we took most of the roads back from the region, because we alleviated ourselves from those problems. But I think, let's take the bull by the horn, let's lead here and move forward. So, appreciate it. Thanks, Councilor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, because also the fire department being so close and they use that access road, and I would hate to see the new fire truck go through those gates and scratch the paint and chrome. I'm good, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Beauregard.
While you were away at the St. Lawrence Conference, I had the opportunity to attend the openings of Oh So Glamorous and Al's Country Mutts. So it was nice to be able to congratulate them on their venture and wish them luck. Also today, I was at the Niagara Transit Commission meeting, and we had budget discussions. So out of those discussions came that the budget passed, and it was that Port Colborne would have an increase to their budget of $93,408. Turns out it's a 10% change from last year. I asked Director Bowles what that would look in percentage compared to our levy, just for comparative purposes. It's a 0.4% change, 0.4% on our compared to our levy. Overall, the NTC is looking at a 7.8% increase in their budget, and it's really to catch up on an operational side and deal with the capital aspects of the NTC. There's going to be a lot of growing pains with the organization. We're getting a whole new fleet of diesel buses. We'd like to go electric. Cost 20 to 30% more to do so. So we have to start getting income before we can do that. But so that will be going to the region. The region will be having those discussions, and then it will be sent back to all the local area municipalities. We'll be able to discuss it further. So.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Aquilina? Nothing? Okay. All right. Nothing to add, Mr. Bowles, with regards to the councillor's comments on transit? No? Great information that you gave. Perfect, thank you. Okay, consideration of items requiring separate discussion. 8.1. (2024) operating levy budget. Recommendation that the Corporate Services Department Financial Services Division report number 2023161, subject 2024 operating levy budget, be received. That the working capital reserve be funded up to the reserve fund policy target as outlined in report 2023-161. That the 2024 operating levy budget as outlined in report 2023-161 be approved. If I could have Councillors Bruno and Bagu move that. I'm going to Councillor Bruno first.
Thank you, Worship. I thought it was important to note in these times of high inflation, what a good job, responsible job, Finance Department led by Mr. Bowles and Council have done, and as well as all the departments for their submissions and keeping costs in check. I think it's the earliest budget we've ever completed. I think it's the shortest budget meeting we ever had. And it's probably the first time where the amount being spent on capital, fixing things and creating new things is actually 57% of the budget as opposed to the operating portion. So just an opportunity to say thank you and to all the staff for doing such an incredible job on the budget.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My sentiments, Councillor Bruno, I did have a couple more questions. I had another book and I left it at home, so I couldn't ask those questions. I forgot them. And if Director Bowles doesn't mind, I could just get some clarification. The one in Appendix C was the, Mr. Mayor, through you, was the land sales. 2023 total revenue was $589,900, but our total expenses was $1.163 million. So it just didn't make sense to me, Mr. Mayor, that deficit of $573,000, and hopefully Mr. Director can explain that.
Mr. Bowles.
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor and council. In the previous year, some land sales occurred and the funds were put into land sale reserve. And when council had purchased a couple pieces of land this year, that land sale reserve was utilized as well as the land sales from this year. So that way there was no cost to the taxpayers with respect to the land transactions. It was all funded between previous land sales and land sales this year.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director Bowles, for that answer. My other question, Mr. Mayor, was I looked up any information regarding the YMCA and say the Bocce Club at the Vale Center. Do they bring income into the city, or does the city give them revenue?
Mr. Bowles.
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor and council. I did check, and I sometimes it's not necessarily clear in the budget, but Bocce Club is net $8,000 to the city, and that is in doing so, we actually have an agreement with them because they keep it open so that way anybody can go and join, and they run the leagues and all of that. So they give us $8,000, maintain their section, that section of the building, do some fundraising for it. So that's how that relationship works. And then the YMCA is actually, if you look under the Valley Health and Wellness Center, cost center, you'll see contracted services there. We contract them for about $200,000 plus some cleaning costs. And I wasn't around at the time, but I do understand that $200,000 was identified or built out of a 20-year agreement, which we have and I have read, But that was the original cost of the city running, I guess, the recreation and gym and all of that, the pool back then. So in some respects, the relationship I just put to council has worked out really well because we haven't had to increase those costs over time, and we've continued to grow programs. And I know recently I have talked to, we talk to the YMCA regularly about their programs, and something that I can put to council if they're willing. I can have the YMCA, they'd be more than willing to come and give an update of how their programs are working and some of the exciting new programs that they're bringing forward to the city.
Yeah, just further to that, Council, when we went to the Valet Center, the new community center, the city had the 3 old facilities, and the city operated all the programs, and we subsidized those for about $265,000 in those days, and we ran about 65 programs. The Y is up to just under 300 programs across the community, and we're spending less money. So it's been a good relationship between us. I know Councilors Bodner, Danch, myself, Councilor Elliott was here back then, and Councilor Bruno when we actually discussed that at this table. And that was one thing that we looked at and saying, bringing them on board gives us so many more options for basically a little bit less money, but we can offer the community way more programming, which has been huge for us. And plus, we're operating 2 pools. We used to only operate 1. We never had a gymnasium. We have a gymnasium. We never had a walking track. So, I mean, that's been a big boost to us. And as Mr. Bowles said, we haven't increased that. So, just to give you a little bit of history on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Director Bowles. I would like the YMCA to come here and explain their programs, Mr. Mayor. I know they came my first term on council. They did a great presentation, and maybe it's time for an update for all our councilors and for the people watching, Mr. Mayor. So,
Yeah, 'cause I think COVID they stopped, but yeah, Brian, if you could arrange that through the clerk's office to have them come out.
Yeah, through yourself, Mayor and Council, I'm more than happy to. Just looking at timing, there is 3 council meetings, I think, left in the year. So if it's not the December meeting, I'll try to arrange for start of the new year, so that way everybody knows going into March break camps and all that, you can get a presentation.
Perfect. Councilor?
one last item, Mr. Mayor, before I vote on it. The 2004 budget, there's nothing in there about Lakeshore Park, the kids park. Is that funded somewhere else, or is that I just don't know. Going forward for 2024, we're supposed to build a park at Lakeshore High School.
Oh,
the property.
You're talking about Lockview Park.
Lockview Park.
Lockview Park, yes.
Lockview.
Through the mayor to the councilor and council, we have $350,000 set aside. It was set aside in the 2023 budget. So it is there, and the Director of Public Works is preparing to get something back to council. Council might, I think, will remember that the project got a little bit delayed because there was some land issues with respect to some property in the middle of Lockview Park, but now those are, if not completed, just about completed, so we'll be able to start moving forward with plans for Lockview Park going into 2024.
I'm good, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bowles, and thank your staff. Great job. Item 8.2. The 2024 proposed user fees and charges. Recommendation that the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the Corporate Services Department Report 2023-162 be received. That the 2024 proposed user fees and charges schedule attached as appendices A to S of Corporate Services Report 2023-162 be approved. And that the draft bylaw attached as Appendix T of Corporate Services Report 2023-162 be brought forward to Council for consideration. I have Councillor Bruno, and if I can get Councillor Beauregard to second that. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. At last Wednesday's council budget meeting, my amendment on cemetery fees was approved. It's now been brought to my attention by some eagle-eyed staff, Mr. Sapowski and the clerk, that there was a portion in cemetery fees that alluded to, I think it's a great idea, didn't even know we had that in it. Children under 12 who pass, there's no fee for that. And I just wanted to make it clear that, that the amendment had nothing to do with that, and I would endorse it staying at 0. Thank you.
Yeah, great, thank you. Any further questions? All in favor? It's carried, again unanimously. Thank you. And again, thank you, staff. 9.1. Pleasant Beach Road retaining wall update. Recommendation that Public Works Department report 2023-217 be received. That council direct the Director of Public Works to proceed with replacing the Pleasant Beach Road retaining wall. I have Councillor Bagu moving that. If I could have Councillor Aquilina second it. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll pass on.
Okay.
Sure, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, Steve, you're all set with that one? Okay, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 9.4. Heritage Designation Project Update and Motion from Heritage Subcommittee, directing staff to research properties. Recommendation that Development and Legislative Services Department Report 2023-212 be received, and that the Chief Planner be directed to investigate the heritage significance of the properties that have shown interest in designation. I have Councillors Beauregard and Bagu moving this. Councillor Beauregard.
Yeah, through your worship, I'm just wondering if I should maybe just provide a little bit of an overview of what's going on. Okay.
Yep, go ahead.
So, as council may be aware, there's a registry. The committee of the Heritage Committee was tasked through this council to go and review all the properties. The properties were then assessed a value from 10 being most significant to, I think, 1 or to 0 to being the least significant. And so a student last year went through and did that. And then the committee was tasked with taking out those properties, like choosing the properties that don't belong on the registry, and providing a recommendation to council to get rid of those properties from the registry. Council may recall that came forward, and we've removed those properties from the registry. Some legislative changes from the province came down, where now, after 2 years, a property on the registry, if not designated, will then come off the registry for 5 years. And then it takes 5 years before it can go back on or be designated. I'm not sure of the specifics there. So we switched our attention to those properties that we think are the most significant. So in that process, so there's those number 10 properties. They're assessed that value. The committee recommended to staff to go and send flyers to these property owners to see whether or not any of them would be interested in designating their property. So we went through and staff implemented that, and it came back that there was 11 or so property owners of these ranked 10 properties that were interested in designation. That being said, there's still several other properties on the Heritage Registry that are ranked 10, but the owners either did not respond or did not express any interest in having their property designated. So this report essentially is saying to just focus on those 10 properties where those owners came back and expressed some interest in our designation, in designating their property. Now, I guess my question to staff would be, in the event any of those properties where the owners did not come back to us, and express any interest. What can happen to those properties once they're off the registry?
Through the mayor to Councilor Beauregard, what happens is at the end of 2024, they will get removed from the registry. And then, like you said, they have a 5-year period where they are no longer eligible to be put back on the registry or for designation. And then once that 5 years has lapsed, they kind of have to go through a bit of a process to be put back on the registry.
So through you, so a property owner then could demolish or remove potentially historical significant features from those properties?
Through the mayor to Councilor Beauregard, that would be correct. Once you're off the registry, you no longer need council approval to demo your structure.
Councillor?
That's all for now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baggett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was somewhat confused when I read this report, and just for a little clarification from staff, is it a benefit or something not a benefit to be designated on the registry for a house? What do they have to do if they're on it?
Mr. Rum?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Could you clarify? I'm not sure what you mean there.
If a designated house is on the registry, what are they required to do? If they, with the city?
Through
Just
you,
get a
Mr. Mayor,
plaque in front of their house, or what?
If the property is already designated, they don't have to do anything. This really only pertains to properties that are on the registry but are not designated. So after 2024, if they're on the registry but not designated, they will be removed. So we underwent this Heritage Flyer program to gauge any interest from properties that are on the registry, to say, let them know that they are on the registry and they may be eligible for designation, and if they are eligible, then to reach out to us to inquire about how that process works, and then we can begin researching the properties that inquired about it. Yeah, so hopefully that kind of.
So I recollect there was a commercial building that was on the registry, and they wanted to change the windows. They came to council to get permission to change the windows, which was fine. But say my house is on the registry, what's it worth to me? Is it a plaque or a piece of paper? Or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are some benefits to getting your property designated. You may be eligible for some grant money for improvements. You're eligible for the heritage tax rebate as well, which is a pool of money that we have that all the designated properties share a split of every year. Those, I think, to my knowledge, are really the only two benefits that they get.
Councillor?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. What's the tax benefit, approximately?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have an exact number.
Mr. Bowles?
Through the mayor to the councillor, right now it's budgeted at $4,000, and then, as was mentioned, it gets split depending on who's on the roll.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Aquilina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm in concurrence with Councillor Bagu. I had to read the report quite a few times to really fully understand what was being said. So I do have a few questions, and I appreciate Councillor Bogart's explanation because that helped me understand the report a little bit better. In the flyer that was sent out, did it explain to Councillor Bogart's point that if you don't register, you're off the list for 5 years? You have 5 years before you can.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Aquilina. That is correct. There was a blurb on there that stated basically the reason why the flyer was being sent out.
Okay. And then on the flyer, was there a deadline for residents to get back to you?
Through the mayor, that is correct. We did have a deadline. It was set sometime in late September.
Okay. And then with this expiring in 2024, is it January or December 2024?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it'll be the end of 2024, so December.
Okay. So we have some time to work on designating these properties. But,
Correct, yes.
But if I understand it, nobody other than these 11 that came forward can be added.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if we do get people that reach out that want designation, we'll for sure do the research. The whole reason that we wanted to reach out to them is because we would rather spend our time researching properties that want the designation as opposed to researching properties that haven't inquired at all. The problem being is that if we start researching properties that haven't reached out to us, we may be spending time and resources on a designation that may not come to fruition. The problem there being if it's worthwhile designating and the applicant or the homeowner says, no, we don't want the designation, we kind of put ourselves in a spot where we may be in a bit of a legal problem. And again, we've spent a lot of time researching this property and it might all be for nothing.
Okay.
Counselor?
Thank you. So I understand that the 11 properties where they've reached out to us to say that they're interested in designation, staff is supporting those. But for the additional 9 that the committee is bringing forward, you're not supporting those because those properties didn't come forward, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. So they didn't reach out to us, and just for the reasons that I had just mentioned, time, money, resources, and a legal battle, we would prefer not to pursue researching the ones that haven't reached out to us.
Okay. And then one last question. I'm understanding that there's $5,000 that's been put aside to do this for the 11 properties. Is there any thought process, and I know that the director of the museum is, very fluent in grant applications or looking for hiring students in the summer and having this be a summer project for them? Like, is that a possibility going forward as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. That's certainly something. All hands really help us out here. I think we're pretty confident that the money that we have set aside would be sufficient to get this work done. The problem really is timing. It's going to take quite a bit of time to do the research, so we kind of want to get on this sooner rather than later to give ourselves as much time as possible before the end of 2024.
Counselor?
That's good for now.
Okay. Staff, just so council has the full picture here, for those 9 other addresses that are in our report with regards to people that did not come back to us, if we do proceed, now some may end up coming our way anyways to designate, but if they don't and we do designate them and we go to court, staff, I know it was mentioned today in senior management meeting, approximate cost to the municipality if we proceed with something that somebody doesn't want? Ms. Lander?
Through the mayor to all of council. So council always has the option of designating a property, whether the owner agrees to it or not. But the owner then would have the ability to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal to then determine if the property would be designated or not. So then it would be up to council to determine if they would want to retain a lawyer and perhaps a heritage professional to defend the decision to designate a property. So it could cost, it could upwards of thousands and thousands of dollars to defend a decision to designate.
Just so council knows, there can be a cost if you designate somebody's property without them really wanting to. Just, we need both sides of the coin here. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bodnar.
So I remember when this came before us a while ago, I don't know how long ago, but, part of council's direction, I thought, was to, because people were applying for, I don't know, permits or something to find out that their place was agriculturally significant. I thought we were going to let everybody know that they were on some kind of a list someplace so that they could have a discussion with staff or know at least before they went ahead and planned something only to find out they had to come to council and ask for relief of it. Was that not part of this whole thing, or was I just dreaming it should be?
Staff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodnar. That was kind of embedded a little bit into the flyer that we sent out. We didn't send it out to all the properties on the registry. As Councillor Beauregard mentioned, there was a ranking list that was done last year. So the flyers were sent to the properties that were ranked from 7 to higher, and they were sent out to them. All the ones to the rest, to below, 6 and below, if they wanted to, reach out to us, we could certainly do the research, but it's probably less likely that a designation would result of it. So those properties are going to be taken off the registry at the end of 2024 regardless.
Yeah?
Through the mayor to the councillor, and just to make you aware as well, the properties that are on the registry but not designated, they're able to proceed with renovations as they wish. The piece in terms of being on the registry is if they want to demolish the building, then council has 60 days to determine if they want it designated or not. So that's the only kind of component of the registry that kind of handholds the owner of the property.
So nobody knows you're on this secret list until the code will say you want to polish it, and you got to wait 60 days to use the decision. I'm just trying, it just seems that I would be kind of pissed if I want to demolish this old house that was didn't know. And I got everything in line and then only to find out that I have to be. I don't know, something seems wrong. We won't know. Nobody else. So.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so you're kind of right there. As we know, our registry is pretty extensive. It's got a lot of properties on it, and I personally have received calls, people inquiring about their project, and I say, well, the property is on this registry, and they're not aware of it. So it's kind of a blessing in disguise that at the end of 2024, our registry is getting a lot shorter. So the ones that received the flyer in the mail, they're the ones that typically have a bit more heritage, what we think significance, and the ones below that they probably don't have significance there. They're going to be removed from the registry anyway. So at the end of 2024, we probably won't have that problem as much because the registry will be pretty much eliminated.
All right. Further questions? Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. I wanted to actually ask the same question Councillor Bunner did. I do remember that because we actually did have an incident of Mr. Fontaine, who owned the former Humberston Builders. He had a wrecking crew scheduled to come in, and he finds out at the last minute while he's contracted this. And as it turned out, there was nothing there. We had to have a special council meeting. But to Councillor Budner's point, there's many people on that lower level list. Either in some cases the building isn't there. There's no remnant of that. It just seems to me that our easy solution back at the time was just to mail all those people a letter. So I think there might have been about 45 or 40. It was quite a significant list. And just to tell them that they're on this. It seems to me that, it is a narrow window of just people who want to demolish that are going to be ultimately affected. But I'm not so sure that for the cost of 45 pre-formed letters and postage, if it wouldn't be wise to just send them all that. You're on an old list. You're nothing to worry about unless you want to demolish your building, and unbeknownst to you, you're on this list. At the end of 2024, it will be removed. If you have any questions, please call the undersigned. A year isn't a long time, except if you're a person who didn't know and need to demolish your building and then find out. And if we could avoid having that happen to one person, I'd like to do it for the sake of 45 letters. I don't know if Councillor Budner wanted to respond to that too. My initial question, though,
Well, just before you move on, I think we need an answer to that. So staff, with regards to that, so you've obviously sent out 20 letters for the 20 properties where you had 11 reply, 9 didn't. So taking those out of the equation, because they've already been contacted, approximately how many more are there?
Through to you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, it's probably more, I don't know the exact number, The properties ranked 7 to 10 are more like in the range of maybe 40 or 50 letters that were sent. And then the 11 that are on the list there are the ones that responded and said, I would like to pursue a designation.
Okay.
The 9 that you're referring to are the ones that are just ranked as number 10. So
Okay.
they didn't reach out, they're just ranked as 10.
Okay, so aside from then the 40 some odd letters you've already sent out, how many in that lower category scoring are there left, approximately?
The ones ranked 6 and below, I would guess somewhere in the hundreds. It's not like 30 or 40. It's the registry is quite extensive. So again, at the end of 2024, having it shortened it really kind of helps us out. But yeah, it's a couple hundred.
Yeah, Councilor Bonner?
That seems like a reasonable thing to do, just so you don't surprise somebody, but I think there's 250 or so. There's 25 on a page, and you just start scrolling, and you get a lot of pages. I don't know, I'd just like to see if that, I guess we know, they don't know, we should let them know. That's what I think.
So before you go on to another question, then,
Yep.
if that's what you want, you should put a motion on the floor. Actually, it's an amendment to the motion that's already on the floor.
Now we're at the end of all this. I'm happy to do it now.
I would put it on now.
Yeah, sure, thank you. Based on the balance of the list not already contacted, that staff work up a letter describing their status. They'll be off in 2024. This will apply only if you want to tear down your house, you should come forward, or your building, I should say. You should come forward now in the interest of not having any issues at the time of applying for a demolition permit.
Councilor Bodnar, will you second that? So we have an amendment on the floor. Councilor, are there any questions to that? You understand what's coming forward then? Okay. Right? Your head's nodding yes? Okay. All in favor? That's carried. Now, back to the main motion as amended. Councilor Bruno.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did have a bit of a difficulty understanding this too. I would have liked to seen the flyer attached, but I guess I'm trying to understand one thing, Chris. So the balance of the people in that top list that scored 10 that didn't reply, and so they've received the flyer, they didn't reply. If they don't do anything, it will fall off, and they're aware of that.
To you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. I should mention too, of the people that we reached out to, I did get a lot of responses back, and people asking questions about what's in it for them, what the process is like, and then further proceed to say I'm not interested in the designation. So it's not like we only had 11 properties reach out and they all wanted designation. We did get a fair amount of participation from the general public about it. Just so happens that a handful of them just didn't want to pursue it. So they should be aware. On the flyer there is a notice saying that your property after 2024 or 2025 essentially you won't be on the registry anymore.
And just lastly, and I think I know the answer to this question, so if you were on that balance list and it falls off and a new person buys that house and they want to designate and they come in and find out that they can't now for 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, is that the process?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. So
That's
if they purchased it after it fell off, they would have to wait the required amount of time.
Great, I'm fine, thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilor Aquilina?
My apologies, through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff. I forgot to ask, when was the last time that the city fulfilled going through the whole designation process for?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I don't entirely know. Perhaps Councillor Beauregard might know if, no, not sure. I don't know the last time we went through a designation. Okay. Not in my time being here, at least in the last 3 years.
Okay, so.
Steph?
2021? So who
Oh,
conducted?
Stephanie, you want to come up to the podium, please?
Hi, yes, through the mayor to council. I can give you a little bit of background on the Heritage Committee. The Heritage Committee is under the Board of Management of now the Museum Heritage and Culture Board, and we work very closely with the Planning Department. We have eager members, and we have learned through the process of joining the Heritage Committee that first of all, it was LACAC, which was a really what everybody here knows and did a lot of designations. But city staff under the last staff also did designations. So we've coupled with regional areas with designations, which is the latest one, which was the train station that was then plaqued and designated. Now, because of the pandemic, we didn't have our ribbon cutting until like a year and a half later, but that was the latest one. And we are also part of some regional groups that do designations, have heritage committees, and we learn best practices from them. The archive staff, the archivist, Dr. Michelle Vosberg, sits on the committee as well to make sure that we're using all our resources, volunteers, and really working through all the legislation with my colleagues are the experts on. So we're ready for designations, I guess, is the short of my answer there.
Okay, so then staff, like maybe not the planning staff, but is some of your staff going to be participating in?
Through your worship to Councillor Akalenka, we will be supporting them. There are the staff liaisons to the committee, the Heritage Committee, but as our councillor representative is Councillor Beauregard and is on Heritage, they're very closely linked. And even the committee has talked about doing more promotion, maybe Heritage Week next year in February. We would be talking about who is designated, what is not. We're talking about marketing, but we really want to focus on the task at hand that the planning department have right now, which is making sure these designations get through, hiring the appropriate people, and then supporting that through. We know that council is interested in heritage and culture and supports it, so we just want to do our due diligence to get these things done for the council.
Councillor?
That's good, thank you very much, Steph.
Great. Councillor Beauregard?
Thank you.
Through your worship. So in regards to this whole registry, and by the end of 2024, the registry is gone. My fear with not going with these additional 9, not researching them, is that you're essentially kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There's potential there of historically significant properties. There's potential, like they're the highest potential actually on our list. That's why they were rated 10. And by not looking into it at all, there's the potential for them to be gone in the future. So I would recommend that staff go and review these properties, not necessarily do a full deep dive, but at least look at them enough to know, okay, maybe this one actually does have potential for designation. And it's not like we have to, and we don't, it's not like we have to designate those properties. It's just it can come to council, and council can make a decision whether to proceed based on the new information as to whether or not there is historical value. I highly recommend that we do focus on those properties where they did, like the owners did come to us and were interested in designation. They should definitely be first on the list. Go deal with that. But I don't think it means that we should not be able to look at the rest, because any one of those properties can have more of a significance historically and culturally in the city of Port Colborne than those that came to us. So that's sort of my opinion. I see the Councillor Bruno has a question.
So do I. Thank you. Councillor Bruno, before I go to you, Councillor Bonner had his hand up earlier.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie, for mentioning LACAC. I sat on that committee for a number of years. So I'd just like to mention although the year built really has not a lot to do with the designation, I would guess that more than half of these 250 were built in the 1800s. If you look through this, it's pretty amazing. It really is. So, and they're still standing, probably you know, unrecognizable from what they were, but built in the 1800s. So just thought I'd bring that up. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Bruno.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess maybe I'm having, I need some more clarity on this. So to Counselor Beauregard's point, those 9 that might be significant, if we did the research on it and found that they were, we can't compel the owner, though, to do anything. I guess I'm having trouble finding out what that really means if we did go the extra mile. To both, so, you know, if you're the other 9, it's like, thanks, Mr. City, right? You did all this research for me, and I'm more significant, and here's a story of my history. But does that ultimately really protect it, or is it that if it rises to a certain level, we can step in? I'm just unclear about all of that.
Ms. Lander?
Through the mayor to Councillor Bruno. So council has the ability to designate any property if it meets the tests under the Heritage Act. The owner does not need to be in agreement with the designation. So they do not need to come forward and say that they agree. We are required to give them notice to let them know that council would like to designate, and they do have the option to disagree, and then council would reconsider the ask or the designation. If council chooses to designate a property, then they have the right to appeal it. So it's really the designation piece. There's 2 pieces. There's being on the registry, which basically means if they want to demolish, they have to come to council and say we want a demo. Council has a decision to make if they want us staff to go and research and try to designate it. And then there's the second list is also the ones that are actually designated. So any of the ones that are designated would go to the Heritage Committee. If anyone wants to do any work on the facade, for instance, they would go to the Heritage Committee and they would propose the work, and then the Heritage Committee would make a recommendation to council in terms of whether the materials they're going to be using, the architect they're going to be using, etc., meet with the significance of the building. And then council would decide whether they can make those changes to the building.
Counselor?
So thank you very much for that. Excellent. I'm fully up to speed now on that. I guess my concern that Councillor Beauregard had is that it would be a shame that because somebody didn't want themselves designated, but it rose to that level of being that significant, and now we're going from 200 and some odd or 400 and some odd down to an extra 9. So is there anything obvious that a review that, and again, I guess really this is a question about dollars right now. I mean, can we tell at a high level whether those other 9 really present something that we might want to go after to do that without causing an exorbitant amount of money? So maybe you can give me some context on that.
Lander?
Through the mayor to Councillor Bruno, in speaking with Stephanie and her team, it does take a significant amount of hours in order to do the full research on a property. And you know, we have had conversations in terms of can we take a preliminary look. No one on staff has a strong heritage background in terms of that ability just to take kind of a precursor look. So we would need assistance from Stephanie's team or from someone that we would retain to do that research. And it does take kind of upwards of 2 full working days to do that research on each property. So it is something significant. It doesn't mean it can't be done, but I would say it would look at approximately $500 per property if we were to get a consultant to help us.
I think I will need Stephanie back up for this one, if you don't mind. So Stephanie, the reason I'm asking you this is because we all have our forte, and planning does that stuff, and they readily admit, nor would we expect them to have that kind of expertise. You obviously probably are the most passionate person potentially in the room here that has a desire to ensure that something couldn't slip through the cracks. And I trust your opinion on for these additional 9, because whether it's $500 or 2 days, and that stretches the thing, I do in my heart of hearts feel that it would be a shame if something happened and we looked back and it was said, well, the council of the day didn't want to spend $500 or 2 days to preserve something that's in Port Colborne's heritage. And that seems to me on the surface, so I want your opinion, a small price to pay at a cursory level to see that that can't be saved. And from your point of view, who has a passion for it, and your team and others, I'm putting you on the spot.
Sure.
Is that something that you wouldn't want to see that opportunity missed? And if it was about dollars from us or time that you feel that those other 9 deserve that? I mean, you've probably driven them and seen them and all that stuff, but I really want to know, you don't want to miss a one-time chance, I guess is what I'm saying.
Through the matter to Councillor Bruno and all of Council, certainly any time that our archivist can have a full file in that drawer when someone comes in is great. If we can get help with consultants to fill those files, it's information that's not going to go away. One of the good things about an archives is the information is there for perpetuity. I think that the game plan that we've come together with through the committee is a smart one. The prioritization of the people who have reached out and said we're interested, I think that that's where we should start. I think that, as you said, a year is not a long time, but you'd be surprised what people who are passionate can get done in a year. So I think if we go forward with the plan at hand, we can certainly come back. We're going to know very quickly how long those were taking, the ones that we've already established as our priorities, and we can come back and look at what would it take to do the rest of them. I've already had somebody who's working on their master's in planning approach the committee. Can they help? Can they volunteer? I do think that the research, if you're going to consider designation, needs to be by people who do this for a living. But that doesn't mean the supportive part of it, either putting things together or bringing it to council, that kind of information can't be with our volunteers in the community who want to engage, that maybe aren't sitting on the committee themselves but have an interest in heritage. So I would say that I support the plan as it goes forward through the report, but with the caveat that we're as you said, we're not going to let heritage slip through. We always want to have great archives and files that are available for anybody who comes in. It might not even mean anything to do with designation. It could be somebody doing their Heritage Fair report and they want to do the Lockmaster's Hut. We want to have that report there to say, here are pictures, this is what's important, this is the date, this is who lived here. The time, I would even say that my staff underestimated. I know that the archivist who had done one said she spent 24 hours on looking at the preliminary. So the time does take up. We run a facility as well. It's not our only job, but I would support it going forward, and then with the caveat that we still do have 2024 to look at once we're done looking at those others, the high priority ones. That's how I feel.
Councillor?
Thank you. So then finally, I like that. So finally, you would support coming forward in 2024 if the time was ticking away and it's 6 months out and we should check those and it's going to cost you this much or some overtime?
Absolutely. Yeah. Through the mayor to council. And I think that our council rep would support that, and I think all of our members would support that, is once we get the job at hand through, see how we're doing and come to council with update report.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Councillor?
Through your worship, I'm just wondering, maybe to you or the clerk, if we want to do that, would a motion be necessary?
Which amendment? That's done. No, this is separate from that. What the councilor's talking about is the 9 others that if staff has the time remaining, they would look after those 9, or they would start looking after those 9.
And through your worship, that staff would come back with a report to council,
Yeah.
with whatever request they require.
Yeah. I I think we can take that as a friendly amendment with regards to direction to planning and Stephanie with regards to that. I think they know what we want, so. Yeah. Okay? Is that all right, guys? You're all right? Well, where's my mover and seconder here? I've got Beauregard and Baggett. That's fine with you two? Okay. You'll take that as friendly? Well, you moved it, so you should. So, any further questions? Yeah, Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to staff. Staff, don't go anywhere. Does the ranking of 10 or 9 and 8 just take into a physical, historical feature of the building, or does it also take into account somebody that has lived there, and does it take into account the overall condition of the residence? Is it a combination of everything?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Elliott. It doesn't do a deep dive into the research of the property. We did have our summer student reviewing the entire registry last summer, so to undergo a semi-thorough review of each property would have been pretty burdensome. So it was pretty much done at a face value level, just architectural style and context in the community. That's about it.
And then overall condition of the property?
That is correct as well.
So I don't like to assume things, but I'll assume this. If you've got a property that ranked a 10 or a 9 or an 8, it's probably a property that's in well looked after condition, and I would say would have a lower chance. We've been throwing around the demolition word, and I don't want people to think that if some of these people don't want their properties designated, that they're going to demolish it and rebuild. Some people just don't like the restrictions of a heritage designation, but maintain the property to the utmost standards. So it's not like we're going to lose heritage buildings for whatever reason. Some people just don't want it, but they are in, and I'll say, well-maintained condition, the 10s, the 9s, the 8s. So just when everybody says, or start talking about demolition, some people get a little anxious that we're going to lose everything in town and they're going to put up new houses. So just for clarification on that, thanks.
Okay. Nothing further? Just a couple quick things here. So of the 11 properties here, is it the entire property, or can there be specific elements? Because I know there's buildings designated Port Colborne because of the windows or a staircase. So with these 11, do you guys know if they're the whole facility, or is it just parts and pieces and a combination of some are the whole property and some are just specific elements of it?
To you, Mr. Mayor, that will have to be defined once we do the research. If we establish that they have significant windows, then that would be the feature that we would be designating. If there are multiple features, then that would all be listed in the bylaw as well.
Yeah, 'cause one of the houses I grew up in at 34 Steel has Port Colborne windows in it. They were a window designed and sold in Port Colborne. Very rarely do you see them outside. They're kind of an oval round with a great big long sill on them. It had like 2 in the house, but yet there was a late 50s, early 60s big addition. It's got vinyl siding. It's not the original roof. The home was originally moved from Tennessee Avenue to that spot back in the century ago. But if you looked at it, yeah, it kind of looks old, but it's the windows to me that are, I remember the staircase and it was nothing special because it's not the original staircase. So.
Yeah, to you, Mr. Mayor, there, as a result of Bill 23, there are changes about how we can actually designate properties as well, and the restrictions have gotten a little bit tighter. I believe that I think that's like 2 of the criteria need to apply. So if they have, the Port Colborne windows, but like you said, the roof has been replaced and everything has kind of changed on the house, then it may still not be eligible for designation anyways. So it's kind of a smattering of issues, but we have to take into account the full context of the property first.
Great, thank you. Further questions? Motion now as amended, and then the friendly amendment. All in favor? Well, that's carried. Good job, Council. Item 9.5, civil marriage solemnization services. Recommendation. Corporate Services Department Report 2023-189 be received, and that the city clerk and chief administrative officer be appointed to provide civil marriage solemnization services starting in January 2024 for an interim period of 1 year, and that a report reviewing the service be prepared for council's consideration in 2025, and that the 2024 fees and charges bylaw include a $250 fee for the provision of a civil marriage ceremony during office hours at City Hall, $300 if held at City Hall outside of regular business hours, and $350 if held off-site plus mileage at the city rate. I've got Councillor Bruno moving that. If I can have Councillor Danch second that. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for the Clerk's Division and Simon to bring this forward. I think it's an excellent idea, and I think the idea of doing it as a trial is the way to go. And I think this could serve our citizens well. I just have a couple of questions regarding one. In the report, and I guess I'll circle back to the mileage rate at some point. So right now in the report, it maybe is implied, but it doesn't say, is this just if the ceremony happens inside the boundaries of the city of Port Colborne?
Madam Clerk?
Or can it happen outside? So somebody rents the hall at Broadway Avenue because that's where their reception is, and they signed up here because they live in Port Colborne.
Through you, Mayor Steele, it would have to be in Port Colborne for at least 2024, and then we can reconsider that in 2025 if council chooses.
The other question I had was with respect to outside of regular business hours. So my only concern with your pricing, and this goes the same thing for off-site. So a staff member has to do this, either clerk or designate or the CAO to do this. So one is getting married, they want an efficient, and they want you at 6 o'clock at the reception. So my concern is that if you go from the multiple of $250 to $300, and you have to stick around till 6:30 and spend an hour there, that seems to me that the staff is really going to be paid potentially for more than the hour, which I see the $50 reasonable, but if it's at 6, 7 in the evening, it's taking you 3 hours to do a 1 hour job. And so I'm concerned that the 300 then actually takes us backwards.
Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mayor Steele, to Councillor Bruno. For 2024, the CAO and myself will ensure that the ceremonies do take place within City Hall during regular hours, 8:30 to 4:30, and of course it would be determined on case basis. As far as the rate is concerned for off-site and outside of business hours, that's the fee that, by doing research on other municipalities, that's sort of the fee that was the fee that was set for other municipalities as well. So it was just it wasn't sort of a fee that was set just out of the blue. I apologize.
So just to be clear, and I don't want to see you have to do this, but if you hang around for 3 hours and do a 1 hour or a half hour extra, and you're here for an extra 3.5 hours, I expect the CAO or yourself want to be reimbursed for that, and ultimately that costs more than $50.
Through you, Mayor Steele, to Councilor Bruno, that is a good point. I believe so. Ceremonies typically take half an hour, so we would only be charging for
2.5 hours.
for half an hour. But if council would like to make an amendment to just say that the ceremonies be performed from 8:30 to 4:30, during business hours at City Hall, that's certainly your prerogative. You can certainly do that.
I'm out of ideas on how you do that, so if somebody else wants to step in, or the CAO, but I guess I was just, back to the, what you wanted here is fantastic, and I think you wanted full cost recovery, and that's fantastic, and I just think that in the practical world, somebody who wants it after 4:30 doesn't want it at necessarily 5, that they want it later than that.
CAO.
I think, through your worship to Councillor Bruno, these are great points, legitimate concerns with the way that the plan would be executed. I'm not sure, so in my experience, in the last 2 years, each year, I've seen the Niagara Falls City Clerk officiate a wedding that I was attending. And I can tell you that he's there, he's a man, he's there a few minutes before and stays a few minutes after. These weddings are not very long. They're not as long as a religious ceremony. They're very brief. I will commit verbally to, and I know Simon doesn't live in town, to doing the after hours ones, if I'm available anyways. Like if I'm at Algonquin Park, I can't really do that. I will do them without putting them on my timesheet if they're after hours for the year. And if it's me, I'm not sure if any of the other staff will be able to do that who are delegated from the clerk's department. And maybe we could track them for the 1-year pilot and bring those statistics back. So if it's, Friday evening at the marina, a Saturday night on Nickel Beach, if I can tear myself away from whatever my personal life is that day, I won't log it on my timesheet, but we'll document the number of requests we get, the number we're allowed to fulfill or able to fulfill, and the number that we're unable to fulfill. And then maybe that will give council a better handle on the quantity, and then we can talk about an appropriate rate, if that's okay. Yeah? All right.
And then the second question was just not, to make it simpler, the city mileage rate. If you look at what's the farthest you could drive from City Hall, and that mileage rate would be, $8.50, shouldn't we just make it like $3.65, for example, and forget about another form and another bill and telling the guy and the new couple, congratulations, it's $352.47 because of the mileage. And Port Colborne's only so big from here. Take the outside limit, do the mileage rate, add it into that. I'm saying, what about 365? Covers everything.
Can I take that as an amendment then, Madam Clerk?
Absolutely.
Seconder, Councillor Bodnar. Yeah. 365 basically takes you 10 kilometers, so it's 20 kilometers there and back. So, which works out to about $12 based on our number that I asked Brian. So, yeah, it makes sense. So you're gonna, you're paying your costs for that.
Simplify it.
And it simplifies it, yeah. Is that all right? Debate on that? So I got Councillor Bodnar, seconding Councillor Bruno, to move it from 350 plus mileage to a flat 365, including mileage. Questions? None? All in favor? That's carried. Councillor Bodnar?
Thank you. So can we say no if someone comes here? And the only reason I say that is, so we're going to have the clerk, CAO, put up your hands, guys, the fire chief, I don't know who's going to do. Is there going to be a bunch of people designated? The only reason I say that is Simon's the only one that everybody else is gone or can't do it or whatever. And God bless them, somebody wants to have a ceremony out in the middle of a farmer's field in Ward 4 at 8 o'clock at night. And the only way to get there is walk from 3rd concession in. Is our clerk going to feel safe doing that? And can she say no, that I'm not going to do that?
Mr. CAO.
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner, again, good points. These are some things that probably we didn't consider. We were trying to look at the service and the pilot project and sort of see how we could assist our community, members and visitors to the community too. We do have some health and safety policies around working alone, and in fact we have processes in place where workers who are out now can use a check-in service to make sure they're safe if a phone call is not made, to sort of say I'm safe. I'm not suggesting that that's sort of after the fact. Prevention is number one. So let us go back and maybe put some context around here in terms of who can do the actual civil ceremonies. I'm sure the clerk would tell you this, but I'll step on our toes a bit and tell you myself. There is a little bit of training required. There are courses put on by our professional associations like the Clerks Association in Ontario. There is a script that has to be followed and a little bit of training. I suspect that we could have the deputy, more than one person here is a deputy clerk by bylaw in order that they could step in an emergency. We also have a deputy clerk on staff, legislative assistants and so on. I think we're going to go back and make sure we have just enough people. I would be afraid of, we certainly don't want to discriminate and we want to perform as many ceremonies as we can. The only time I think we would turn someone away other than a health and safety situation is availability of staff. But we also think these aren't going to be surprises. We think they'll be booked weeks or months in advance. So on that basis, we will look into that safety issue, but I think those are the staff, hopefully that frames the staff that will be performing them, and the fact that, like I said, it'll be subject to staff availability, but I can't imagine turning anyone away other than that.
Counselor? All set? Anything further? Council? I think it's a great idea. I'm just looking at by the canal, Nickel Beach,
Yeah.
Valet Center. I've seen weddings done right on center ice. They rent the ice and they pay for staff to come out for their ceremony. Cedar Bay Park.
Yep.
Could be Weaver Road at the little event center they have there. I mean, I think this is great for us. I know there's some, with the comments being made, you know, that's stuff that staff's going to look into. Most of your ceremonies are going to be around the 4 o'clock or earlier time anyways. I found that out when I was in Niagara Falls, when the American ambassador came in and we visited them. They were actually setting up for 3 weddings that afternoon in their chambers. They charge like $800 or something. I mean, it's expensive in Niagara Falls, and they were increasing. They're looking at like, somebody told me they were going to go to like $1,200, and they would get it. They do a ton, but it's Niagara Falls, right? I mean, it's, yeah. So, anyways, we appreciate this coming forward, and good job with the clerk's department. So, seeing no further questions, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Maybe you're going to redo your vows, Frank. Yeah. Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay, here it ends the items that were coming forward. We have no motions this evening. Are there any notices of motion? No, seeing none. We have minutes of boards and committees. We have 2 sets. I'll do them in block, 20.1 and 20.2. Colborne Public Library Board meeting minutes of September the 6th. And 20.2 Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting May the 30th. If I could have Councilors Ackling and Bodnar move those. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. Bylaws, if I could have Councilors Danch and Hoyle move items 21.1 through to 21.5. Oh, yeah, and for any of those bylaws that were amended during council, the one is the marriage one, so as amended. Questions on any of the bylaws? Again, moved as amended. All in favor? That's carried. That's it. At this time, I'll adjourn this portion of the meeting. We thank those that came tonight and those that watched us on YouTube. Thank you. WeeStream. Sorry, WeeStream. Thank you.